Hey everybody. Happy Wednesday. I am here today. I'm super stoked. Super stoked because I am here with Daniel Scott. You can see his name right there on the nameplate. Daniel Scott from Bring Your Own Laptop. And Daniel and I have known each other for years now. And we actually met. I'm not sure how we met, but I I featured Daniel's courses on my graphic design trend videos, and Daniel at one point said, "Hey, I've actually used a couple of your trends as examples to help teach some of my Adobe courses." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." So became an affiliate and started sharing, the the magic of Daniel Scott with the world. So why don't you say hi, Daniel, before I just keep going on and on?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Philip.
So Daniel has a website called Bring Your Own Laptop, and it's at BYOL. If you go to byol.me/Philip and enter the code FIG10, you can actually get a 10% discount on Daniel's membership site. And how much is it per month right now, Daniel?
Per month, it's 12 bucks. 12
Yeah,
US.
which is insane for the value and the quantity of amazing trainings that Daniel has on that site. For $12 a month, you get access to all of it. It's incredible. And so he teaches everything: Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere, XD. I mean, the list just goes, InDesign, the list goes on and on and on. So, and I have actually taken a few of Daniel's classes. So is my wife, in fact. And so he is a fun, engaging, really easy to watch trainer, and has probably, I'm going to say, over a decade of experience by now, probably. And so Daniel's just launched a new course called Figma Advanced. And we're going to be talking about Figma today. And I'm excited about that too because I am a total Figma newbie, and Daniel has been getting me up to speed over our last couple of conversations. And so, why don't you just share a little bit about? First of all, let's talk about Figma. What is Figma, Daniel?
Figma. Figma is primarily used for prototyping websites and apps. So designers use it to get the look and feel for an app quickly enough that they can test it with users long and do that testing kind of loop quickly before they then hand the work over to a developer. So they can do a lot of work on their own, make a website, make an app look and feel like a website enough that they can get and prove a lot of their kind of theories and hypotheses, and go back, quickly change things, go back, quickly test, and before it goes into the development stage. So it's that rapid prototyping tool. That's what Figma does.
So, when you say prototyping, what is the difference between like a design layout and a prototype? What are the what is there functionality there?
Yep. So before Figma or the competitors to it, and you'd mock it up in Photoshop or Illustrator. Designers did it forever. You got a website and you just mocked it up and kind of looked like you just sent out, and you had a JPEG, and that's all you really had. So Figma allows you to do that, but prototyping is that next level where you can actually build interaction and build something quite convincingly, quite quickly, that looks and feels like an app. You might be tasked as a designer to build a full website, or maybe just a checkout flow or a cancellation flow. You just do that, make it do the thing you want it to do really quickly without having to code anything. That's why it's really nice for designers who maybe aren't comfortable with code to be able to build something quickly that can be tested, prove things, iterate, then go into that harder, off to developers to get built.
So it can do websites, it can do apps. One of the things that I did recently, and I told you about this, is I went in my private Facebook group, the Brand Design Masters Facebook group, and I asked everybody. I said, "Are you using Figma, number one, and number two, what are you using it for?" And I, I had some answers that I didn't expect, like social media graphics and other stuff. So what are kind of the extended applications of Figma that people are using?
So Figma, other than like the prototyping stuff, it's kind of like Adobe Illustrator. It's like very quick. It's vector. You can, like, if you had to learn Adobe Illustrator versus Figma, Figma is easier and quicker. It's just designed, doesn't have the legacy stuff that say some of the older programs have. And what's happening is people that are meant to, I'm building a website or I'm building some sort of app or, and then somebody says, can you also produce some social media graphics or this ad? And you're like, all the graphics are in there, all the colors are in there, all your styles are in there. You're like, I'll just make it in this because there's no benefit to jumping out to another program. So people are using Figma for digital outputs more and more because they know it, they're in it all the time, and it's really kind of, it's becoming people's daily driver, so you just end up sticking to the software you need.
So what's Figma not good for? What would you say don't use Figma for?
A lot of people new to Figma will kind of see Figma as building apps and websites. The problem is it doesn't actually output much that a developer can use. It doesn't build the website. It doesn't, like, you can't just say it hit print and a website pops out. And people get a bit some like, well, why am I building it in Figma? If I'm not going to be able to have this output. It's because Figma is good for going quickly. Getting your idea, getting the client's ideas, getting them onto paper, getting them actually working, getting them tested in hours, in days, instead of the development team maybe building something, then testing it. So it doesn't do things, it kind of gets to a point where you're like, okay, now we've got this other chunk of work to do. But for me, to be honest, that's where my knowledge and desire to learn, like, I know a little bit of coding, but not enough to do it properly. So I like to get to that point and be in control of that point. And, but after that, that's when it gets handed over and the developer can work with you with your files quite a bit if you get advanced in Figma. But often they're just like, here you go, this is how it works, build that.
Yeah. So how much is Figma? How much does it cost?
Probably one of the big benefits of Figma, it's free. You can get away with a free license for you only bump into some of the paid stuff when you need more team members working on one project. And once you get to like needing a team on projects, you're probably out of the free stage anyway. And then it's something reasonable. It's like $15 a month. It goes
Oh my
up from
God.
there,
Yeah.
but only like it jumps to like enterprise, and then that's still reasonable. And then when you're talking about enterprise pricing, if
And
you're using
companies
it
are
in an
paying
enterprise
for it. It's
company,
not you, and it doesn't matter.
yeah,
Your boss is paying out of his
you can
cost
you
center.
can use it free. Yeah.
So obviously there's been some weird, kind of antitrust purchase stuff going on with Figma. So tell everybody kind of what's been happening.
Yeah, so UX design, there's been a few tools come and go. There was Sketch and InVision had something, and then uh, and now Figma has become the top dog. Adobe saw them as a competitor. Adobe. They're in the same creative space. Adobe has XD, which is their kind of UX design tool. Okay, and Figma was a competitor, and Figma has just ran away in terms of adoption in the industry, especially in the like professional kind of full-time UX designers in companies. So Adobe went and bought them, gave them a cool $20 billion for it. So that's how
Damn.
valuable that industry is. And obviously that's the value Adobe saw in it. So they've canned this thing they've spent a lot of money on, bought this thing for 20 billion. The problem now at the moment is that the government's worried that like antitrust happens, just buying and closing down at competitors, or at least just gobbling up the market, not sharing it around. So I don't think it'll wash out, but I thought it would be over by now. So Adobe own it, kind of, but Figma's still running independently. And even if this doesn't go through, Figma will still be the winner. So if I was picking a tool to learn and I know them all, I'd still go Figma, because even if this is squashed by the government, Figma still is the industry leader, and we'll have to try and breathe life back into XD, but I don't think that'll happen.
So the reason why I brought that up for everybody who's in the audience is that if you want to use Figma, you go to the Figma website. You can't get it from the Creative Cloud at this point. So you have to go to figma.com. You can you can use it in the browser, or you can actually download a desktop app to use. So that's very cool. But at the moment, Adobe owns it on paper and is taking in the money. But now, do you know, I'm just curious about this. Do you know who brought the antitrust suit? What country?
The US.
Oh, the U.S. did. Okay. I didn't know, because Europe is usually much more strict about that sort of thing. So I was just kind of curious.
No, I think it's US.
So
I
let's
don't know.
talk.
Like these facts might not be like I'm not following it that closely. I follow it enough, but I'm pretty sure
That's all
it's
right.
the US government at the moment. Yeah.
So thanks everybody for coming. I'm really stoked to see everybody here. Christina's World. I gotta put this. I gotta show you this. I used to think y'all were actually the same person. So I just thought that was
I,
precious. Thank you,
I can
Christina
kind of
World.
same
And
glasses.
he
We're
doesn't
both
have
so
his bright
handsome.
glasses on. So yeah. Thank you. But Yusuf, Bridget, Bridget was telling a story there. Everyone should scroll back in the chat. She actually was hired twice to run live events for Figma with broadcasts over 100,000 people there. So it's obviously doing pretty well. And there's some other questions coming in, but I tell you guys, if you could type question in all caps before your question, and then we're going to scroll back at the end and take all the questions, but we're not going to answer them as we go along. But so one thing I do want to ask everybody who's here is, are you using Figma? Have you used Figma, and are you using Figma? So give me just a yes or no, because I'd love to kind of just take a poll of everybody to find out how many newbies or how many kind of advanced or at least experienced people that we have. I'm going to take the seat of the inexperienced person because I have never actually personally used Figma, nor actually done a lot of UX UI. I've done a lot of consumer research, like focus group sorts of things for big corporations. But so everyone, yes, 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 yes. Okay, couple no's, 3 not yet. That's good. Yeah, so I'm the newbie. I'm playing the part of the dope, and I'll ask all the stupid questions, so you guys don't have to in the chat. And I always try to fashion myself as the crash test dummy, and I'm very authentic about what I do know and what I do not know. And Figma, I do not know, which is why I'm so stoked to have Daniel on the show. So I want to talk a little bit about UX UI because something happened in the creative industry, the creative professional industry. I want to say maybe 8 years ago. I'll be charitable. Job descriptions were like your normal job descriptions, and then suddenly every single job description that came out was like UX UI, UX UI. And my having been in corporate and global agency world, I know that HR are the people who are actually putting those job descriptions out there, and they're just like cutting and pasting stuff and programs that you need to know into those job descriptions. So if you're looking for a job, take those with a major grain of salt. And number two is suddenly it seemed like absolutely everybody had to know UX UI. Why? And so let's talk about what those acronyms actually mean and what they don't mean.
Sure.
Let me know.
Yeah. UI UX, they put the slash in. You got to say UI UX. UI design. If I'm a UI designer, I am designing I'm pushing pixels around, picking fonts, picking colors, kind of old style web design that I used to do. And I was using a lot of my own, like, I know this works well. Or in last jobs, I think this was and I think this is what the client, there was a lot of me poured onto the page, and I was a UI designer. And I was like, what do you think? No, you don't like that? Okay, we'll go back and we'll do it. When you add the UX element to me as a UX designer, there's other forms of UX, but we'll talk about UX designer because that's the zone we're in. When I'm a UX designer, I might start with a hypothesis. I might come up with what I think should be right through my experience, but can only continue along unless it's tested and validated. And that
A
is
hypothesis of what?
Whatever the job you've been given. So let's say you've been asked to redesign somebody's website, and you need to find out who the target audience is. They'll call it the persona. Okay, who is it for? Then you think, okay, I know what this person, I know a bit about them. Okay, you figure out that. That's kind of normal UX research. Okay, you kind of figure out who that target audience is, who the perfect client is. And then that's where your hypothesis is. Like, they're going to probably like this type of layout. They're going to probably need this kind of information. We need to treat them in this kind of language. We need to use this kind of photographs. So that's your hypothesis.
Oh, it's like strategic design.
I think there's going to be so many things that you know way more than I do that are just applied and talked about differently in this because, but the difference between it kind of now is it's falling onto me as a designer to kind of come up with these things, but then test them. Okay. And then okay, this is what I thought was going to happen, and I needed this person. Let's say we often will test things like user flows. So we'll say, I want a person to be able to check out, buy something. So I find the kind of right user to do the testing. I build something that I think will work, and I test it. And then I watch them. Did they get lost? Did they get to where they want? How did they feel about it? Did they, so I can do those tests on my theory of what should happen, but I'm not so invested in this. I haven't poured my artistic soul into it like I would have as a UI designer, and be heartbroken when they didn't like it. I'm kind of like, let's get this done. Let's get it in the hands of the people that are going to use it quickly, so that I can learn what I don't know. We're never going to get it right the first time, but I can, because of Figma, I can quickly test, get it to them. Things are not working. I can, for the next person that I'm testing with, change those things, or with that exact same person. Okay, we can do these like really quick iterations so that they can not get lost and get to where I need them to be. So big design projects, there's a lot of things to do. Often UX designers end up doing small things like, we need to add like the things that we're doing at Bring Laptop now. We like the discount code that you've got there. That is new. We had to implement it. How do we implement it? Where does it go? Is it a link? Is it something you type in? But that is all tested. It's not like, I think it definitely should be just a box you type in. You find out when there's a box to type in that people end up going and searching the internet for other codes and leaving your site. You're like, where are you going? You're watching the user test, run off to go to some spammy website to find an even better discount code. Is there a big thing?
I see. Right.
Like, but that's only through testing that I've figured that out. Whereas a UI designer, I would be doing it. Here you go. This is what my professionalism and my experience says you should do. Whereas a UX designer, I'm saying, this is what I think we should do, but let's go quick. Let's test it. There's more to it, but I feel like that's a good understanding of those two roles. They throw them together. If you are hired for a UI UX role, they mean UX. They want to hire somebody who knows how to test as well. They don't want a UI designer. Nobody ever asks for a UI designer because the real value for somebody comes through that testing things. I'm not sure I'm doing my hands, but
no, yeah, it totally makes sense. And that's how in how I just thought about it in terms of the terminology, that the user interface itself is the buttons, the functionality, the flow, the navigation, but the user experience was much broader. It's where it kind of flowed into strategic design and how people, feel when they go to a site, and what they actually do. And so that's where it becomes like, I have a colleague of mine who's an expert user research person, works with, all of the gigantic tech companies. And in consumer packaged goods, where I grew up, we called it consumer research, because you have big focus groups and you take them a bunch of packagings or products or names or designs or whatever, and then you get their feedback on it. Consumer research. And then she does user research, and we're always having this arm wrestling match about like what the actual term is. So she's been winning, so I'm now calling it like user research.
And if she was working amongst, a large UX team, it'd be, there's different terminology there. If she's working for a smaller one, is she a consultant, internal teams? Like it's taken a big chunk of, like the existing consumer research stuff. And for me as a designer, I never touched that stuff. I'd be given a brief in the past, whereas now I'm expected to work along. For me, I work in the small time, so I work in small projects, so I'm expected to do all of that. Whereas you can also be a UX designer where you are given a lot more information to follow, so you become a bit more of a UI designer. You still do the tests, but you're being given the research. Whereas me, I have to work with the client, talk them through it, coach them through it. I have to find the user groups to test with. Like, I'm doing all of that. So depends on where you want to go into UX. You can be part of a huge team, or you can do it all yourself. I like the do it all yourself stuff, but
yeah. So let's talk about the application. Let's talk about your training. So you have an essentials course and you have a advanced course. And so kind of break that down for us about where's that line in between the two? Like, what do you cover in the essentials, and when does it become advanced?
So Essentials is for anybody who's never used it before. So I'd expect people never to, like, we don't cover all the, like, how to download it, but, like, that's the expectation. First video, make sure you've downloaded it or logged in. Okay, so that's the kind of starting point. No experience at all from anybody. And I try to make sure the essentials, essentials, the word sounds like, we're only just going to do the basics, but we do a complete job. I want people to leave essentials and not need advanced. I want you to do essentials, be able to get that first job because you've worked through a full project and understand it all. You still need experience in the industry. And the advanced course is for people who either have experience, you're working as a UX designer, and you self-taught Figma and you're good enough and you can do the things you do, but there's more to it. Figma Advanced is where you step up, or it's for people who finish the essentials. It's kind of basically picks up from there and then goes off to get you to another level. So if it was me, I'd just do both of them back to back. But if you are out there and you're reasonably experienced and if I say the word, what a variant is, and you're like, definitely know one of those, go to the advanced course. If you're not sure what a variant is, go to the essentials.
So here's the thing. To anybody here who's in the audience and you're not a member of Bring Your Own Laptop, BYOL.me, if you use my affiliate link in this code, it's only $12 a month. And with the code, you get 10% off. So you take $1.20 off. It's an incredible deal. And so if you don't know anything about Figma, literally for like $10.50, you can learn from the very beginning to the very end of Figma with Daniel's help. And so this is one of the ways that I keep my lights on is this affiliate relationship that Daniel and I have. And so it would mean a lot to me if you do sign up with my link, byol.me/Philip, and use the code FIG10. The other thing is that if you've never been a member and you sign up for a full year, you get 10% off the whole year, which is awesome, really awesome. And it's all about saving the green, right? So check out those links at the bottom of the screen. And do that if you are looking to get into the Figma world. So what is, let's say, if you were a graphic designer, Daniel, and you had never been involved in Figma at all, and you have some clients, you've done some web work for them, you maybe done some brand identity work, logo work, and some social media graphics. You've been working as a graphic designer, and you want to kind of like up your game. You want to bring another skill set. You want to become more of that V-shaped designer, right? That I'm always talking about in all my videos, where you have more than just one particular skill. And say you're going, okay, Figma sounds kind of interesting. It sounds like it intersects and interweaves with graphic design in a smart way, and it's going to broaden my tool kit, right? So if they're going to their clients or interacting with their clients, how do they start talking about what Figma could bring to their clients' world?
I think probably if it was me, because I did this, that's why I can speak so honestly about it. I was scared of the UX UI world, same as you. I saw it appearing in lots of jobs. I'm like, oh, I should probably learn this. But it felt like such a barrier to cross. I love all the creative spaces. Like I started with graphic design, moved into video. I did a lot of web. I love all of the bits, do lots of 3D. But UX was this I looked it over the wall. I was like, too hard. There was all this language I didn't understand. There was all these hipster looking people, bigger glasses than me. I'm like, wow, those are good beards. And I was just scared of the whole getting into it. But I think you just need to go and do something like that Essentials course. It doesn't have to be mine, can be anywhere, but do something so you know where it is, and what it does, and start learning the language. Because what you'll find is after a while, like you have in our kind of conversations, you're like, oh, that's just like that. I'm like, exactly like that. But we call it this and this. And if you've got any experience in graphic design, man, it's so much more helpful than somebody that is new, that have gone through the right processes to learn UX, because we all know, to design a website or an app, so much of it is about type hierarchy and, font choice and color choice and layout and spacing. All of those things are a huge asset to a UX designer. The testing stuff you need to learn, it's not hard. You can do the hard way. There's easy ways. I think just go and do a project first, then you'll be able to go to your client and have a sense. you'll just know what will be right for you at your space. There's no point picking up a Fortune 500 website design because that's out of your scope. But a smaller client that has a need for a website or an app, you might be like, all right, in parallel, I'm going to do this. I get to learn, get to get paid, and take on that project. But I think doing a short course first so you can get the right words. Like, it's funny, like I feel like most of it is getting the language down and understanding what it means and what the expectations are for you as a UX designer. Once you've got that, it's kind of like, is that all I got to do? Or that's what I'm meant to do. That's my position. Because that's the tricky bit at the beginning. You're like, what am I meant to do? Where do I start? So just getting in, doing a small project, find a client. That's what I do.
So what is this? What is some of the cool? I mean, one of the cool things I saw in Figma when I was, actually looking at one of your YouTube videos this weekend was that it's in like I want to say like Canva in a weird way. You can have a kind of a library of brand assets. You can have a library of colors and library of logos, and even save elements as what components. That's I see. I learned the word right.
You got the word.
I learned the word in my new terminology. It's so you can design a button that you say you use that button across the entire app. One of the cool things about Figma that I saw was that if you have an app or a website or whatever that's got 15 pages to it, you tweak where the logo is going to fit because it's got to fit in that ugly notch that's all on all the iPhones now, right?
Yep.
And so, but you move the logo just a little bit, and then in Illustrator you'd have to go to every single artboard and like change every single logo and measure it, right, and the whole thing, and it was such a nightmare. In Figma, you change it on one, and it changes on all of them, right? It's like going into Google Docs and changing the footer or whatever. It changes the entire document. And it saves so much time. Like what else is in Figma that you find to be like a huge time saver, or something that maybe isn't seen in other Adobe apps like Photoshop or Illustrator, but that like is one of those power engines or gears that Figma hands you?
It's probably two things. One is a lot of the other Adobe programs aren't designed, like Illustrator would be a good comparison. You could use Photoshop, but we all know with page 30 of Illustrator, and you've got lots of stuff going on, things start becoming slow. Figma however it's made, it's just super fast for doing just huge. I got hundreds of artboards going. And there's a lot of parallels between the two. A lot of the shortcuts work, so that's kind of transferred across. And like you're saying, like at the beginning, probably it's quite like using Illustrator. It's when you get to multiple pages where you need things to be consistent on lots of pages, because like the top nav and all the navs are going to be the same, brand colors are going to be the same, the images, the logos, all of that can be shared within your team. So if you're working especially if you're working in a company where your internal marketing team or design team and the stuff is the same every week, you can put a little bit of effort into styles and your brand, so that the next time you do it, it's twice as fast, and the next time it's twice as fast again, and then you start being able to create things really quickly. But where the real benefit for Figma comes is the prototyping, is when you say it's really easy. You're like, I want this button to click and go over here. And I don't know, when I used to do it and things like, there'd be a lot of mocking up and fakery going on before these tools. You'd be trying to make it look like a website, but Figma's so easy to make it, click this button, go to this page, animate this in, have these interactions, and the more advanced you get, the more convincing you can make it. It can look, without the touch of code, like a complete, website. And then, that's it. The prototyping stuff is probably where it gets really special.
So let's say you've designed a prototype, and you have a client, and you want to share it with them. So one of the powerful things in it that I kind of recognize is the ability to share and have them play with it like an actual app, right? And then how do they then give you feedback? Like, how do they go, oh, on this page it does this and this, but I wanted to do this other thing? Is there a way for them to register comments in Figma somewhere?
So if you're prototyping websites on a desktop, there's a lot of screen capture that people do. There's services that will do it for you. You can say, I'd like males in this age group that are this income range to test this. They will turn the cameras on and talk out loud to give you really kind of feedback. They'll actually do it and say, you give them instructions on what to do, and they'll try and do them and explain where they get stuck, what they didn't like. You ask them questions, kind of formal one. Often the best testing is just giving somebody in person, say it's an app, you can project it to an app onto your phone. Figma has an app that you can run these things on. So it looks and works like an app, and you just sit and watch them. Give them some tasks. You say, I'd like you to cancel your account, because that's maybe the project you're working on. And they click around, and you're watching them, and you really want them to click the button that you've built and spent ages doing, and they don't. They go somewhere else. You're like, oh. And then the second person does the same thing, and you're like, it's not them, it's me. You're like, wait there. And you go and change something, and then the third person goes and does it. You're like, woohoo, and like then the fourth person does it, and then by the fifth person, you don't need to test that anymore, because you don't need a whole lot of testing to prove some of these things. You just need some, it's great to get in the hands of people and just give them very limited kind of scope, give them a really generic job to go do and see where they go.
So you would get those avatars or those customer targets through the client, or how do you do it?
Wherever you can get them. A lot of stuff ends up happening just in the office. You find Dave from accounts because he kind of is close enough. And ideally, if you have the budget, you want to have somebody find the right perfect people. It might be that if it's for a farmer's market, it might be taking it to the farmer's market. If it's for this client, you go see the client. You ask the client to talk to your super users. You ask there's no real, but you'll find even just stuff for the online user testing really valuable. You can get 80% of the way with just people that are close enough, because it's not like they have an extra hand or something. They're as long as you're kind of close enough, you can get a lot of the details done. And then once you've kind of got the basics kind of sorted out, then you might spend a bit more time finding the exact clients, finding people through their emailer who would help me do this. It's not that hard if you set it up right, and it doesn't cost a lot. Generally, Amazon vouchers is all it takes to get people sufficiently motivated to help do some user testing. And this is coming from my experience. If you're working in a bigger company, you'll have somebody whose full-time job it is to run these tests. I'm coming at it from a small to medium-sized company style thing. So yeah, there you go.
So what haven't I asked? And anybody who's watching right now who has a question, type question in all caps, ask your question, because we're getting to that point where we're going to start Q&A. And so I've been asking you some questions, Daniel. Is there any question that I haven't asked you that you think that I should have, or some part of Figma that you think people might need to know about that I'm not getting to?
No, I think, how much is it? What does it do? I think we've got a good scope of what Figma. I don't think any more. What could I add to that? I think people just need to go and start playing with it, because I feel like what I really want is to give permission to people permission to go start being a newbie UX designer, because there's no secret handshake, there's no special certificate, there's no university degree. Just go be, if you're like, I give you permission to be the world's worst UX designer and start getting involved. That's just go out, start doing it, go to a meetup, do a course, start trying to get a client to do it, do self-directed projects, just get involved. Because I feel like for me as a designer, it gave me so much more. It was hard when I was working, in a branding company, because you do stuff and it was like the client loved it and everybody loved it, but it was hard to measure. I love the measuring part of UX design. I love going, I've done this thing, and now I get to yes or no test it, and I get to kind of disconnect myself from the, will he like it? Like trying to do presenting my slides at my, at the pitch is nerve-wracking. Whereas I feel like this is like, it's not you. If you're the client, it's not me versus you. Oh, you don't like green? Oh, okay. Whereas I can say, I know you don't like green, but your users do, Yes. So it's not me versus you. It's let's do what you want, the customer wants, like the consumer wants, what your user persona wants, and it detaches me from this me versus you, which I find uncomfortable as a designer. I'm not very spectacular at kind of like forcing my point or convincing people of something that I can see that they're not into, whereas I can defend a persona easily. because it's not me. It's what they want.
There's basically two things that take graphic design out of being a beauty contest, where it's basically an arm wrestling match between what your client likes aesthetically and what you like aesthetically. And we know who wins that argument because they're paying the bill, right? So the client always wins. Brand strategy, which is to a certain extent what you're talking about in the brand persona or the target persona of the app, is what that brand strategy, what that customer target is looking for, what they expect, what they like, and then user testing. That's the other one. So it's basically brand strategy and user testing are the two things that take design out of being a beauty contest and into being something that is much more objectively rather than subjectively judged. And that is where we want to be, because it's no fun, as you said, Daniel, and I have been in many a presentation, in many a boardroom with senior executives who don't like green. And they don't understand that the persona is actually expecting green. They have a tendency to love green, but their daughter looked at the design overnight and doesn't like it because she doesn't like green. So anyway, that's my little diatribe.
I think you've summed it up way better than I have as well. Because I feel like you're totally right. Like there's so much in the field that you're more comfortable with, that it's plus UX, plus user testing, and you can take yourself out of it, and you can take the beauty contest out of it.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's see if we have any questions. Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to scroll back. I know it was one kind of at the very beginning. That, hold on, scroll. Yes. Yusuf said, is there any discount for people living in developing countries? His courses are amazing. I can't pay because my country's economy is kind of wicked. Anything there?
Yeah, we don't. We keep our prices super low, but I know there's places that just can't do it, unfortunately. And for that, check out my YouTube channel, Bring Your Own Laptop. There's good free stuff on there. That'll help you out.
And, to be honest, there was a kind of a super essentials cruise through live stream that you did of Figma, which is what I looked at this weekend, which gave me kind of like a broad overview of like kind of what it does. Which is, if you can get in there and then get the app and like a couple Adobe apps, you're going to be able to figure it out. It's not like there are massive differences. And the learning curve, if you're a graphic designer and know Photoshop and Illustrator, is like not so very steep. But the functionality of it is something that you haven't experienced in any other Adobe program. So that's where you're going to need Daniel's training, is to really how to leverage that part of it. James says, bring your own laptop is amazing, which we all know is true. And I also want to say that Peter Lewis from Corkworks, who was a Brand Design Masters Guild member, said he jump-started my Premiere learning curve. Very grateful. That's awesome.
Premiere, that's a tricky one to learn. It's hard, way harder than Figma. So if you've learned Premiere, your Figma's
Oh, tell me about it. Like, I looked at Premiere. I've been in the industry for 25 years. I looked at Premiere and I'm like, I'm hiring someone to do this.
I do well with the Premiere course because luckily Adobe made such a, it's a tricky one to learn. So it keeps me employed. It's not that hard.
Yeah, I bet it does.
I need to focus on the things that are important. Yeah.
Okay. I should actually just take your Premiere Essentials course. John says he joined in June this year. He's a newbie, but he's really impressed, which is awesome. Everyone's just saying hello to each other back and forth here. So I don't have any questions, man. Does that mean, all right, you guys, look, there's a lot of people in the audience. No one has a question about Figma. If you don't, I'm going to start telling like old agency war stories. All right. All right, I'm going to tell you one agency war story because it's kind of germane to what we were talking about. And then you got to be typing your question and hitting send, because otherwise we're going to blow out. My agency war story is I was working in the fashion industry, and I was a VP of design, and we were doing product reviews, right? So all of the merchants who are internal buying partners fly in from San Francisco, and we have these huge meetings where we review all of the, in this case, it was teen girls denim, right? So we're looking at dozens and dozens of styles of pants. And the SVP of merchandising happened to bring her 12-year-old daughter to the meeting, right? So there are 30 people from product development, there are 25 people from merchandising, the SVP of merchandising, and she's looking at all the styles, and she turns to her daughter and she says, "Which one do you like?" And she pointed out the one that she liked, and they ended up buying, I don't know, $250,000 worth of that pant on the opinion of a single 12-year-old girl who just happened to be the daughter of the SVP. That happens. And what we want to do as designers is try to figure out a way that we take that subjectiveness out of our process. Now, that's a worst case scenario, and you're not going to be able to like go, get that girl out of this meeting, because that's not going to happen. But anyway, that was one of my war stories. Here's another one. Here's a very quick one that I was working on the agency side, and we were doing a job. We were redesigning a kitty litter for a very massive kitty litter manufacturer. And when we were doing our kind of research, we went into PetSmart, and we went to the kitty litter aisle, and we started just interviewing people and videoing them about what they thought about certain kinds of kitty litter. It was really fun, right? And so when we went in and we pitched the client, we gave them our whole credentials presentation, all of our slides, our portfolio, all of our thinking, our initial designs, all this sort of stuff. And at the end, we had like 5 videos of these consumers in the aisle talking about kitty litter. And when we finished that presentation, the only thing those people could talk about were what those people in the aisle said. And the voice of the consumer and the opinion of the consumer carries so much more weight with clients than your opinion, their opinion, or anybody else's. So that's something that you can use in your presentations. Get some video of your consumers responding to your work, because that's what's going to drive adoption, as we say, or acceptance of your work.
It's amazing. Like for a UX project, my value, if you hired me, doesn't come from, I think I can make beautiful looking things, but my value doesn't come from that. It's not what I can charge for either. It's not it's the being able, client management is one of them, but getting the brief really clear with the client and getting that persona sorted and us all agreeing on it. That's the most important bit with the client, because then we all know that this isn't the client and that is the client. And when you do the testing, like you did with those videos, what they say is way more important than what you think, or what your wife thinks, or what your husband thinks, or what I think. It's what that 5-minute user test was when they didn't go where we wanted and we thought they should. Damn it.
So we got a question. John asks, you used to be on the fence about whether XD or Figma was a better prototyping tool. Are you still learning or leaning more towards Figma? I mean, I guess the point's kind of moot, but it's still an
Point's kind of moot now is I teach an XD course, I teach a Figma course, and they're both great. What ends up happening, the problem with it is you've got to learn Figma now because XD's been bought, and also Figma is just, the jobs are all requiring Figma. It's like learning Canva, which is amazing, but if you're going to go into a big studio, they're probably going to want you to use Photoshop and Illustrator. So even though it's a great tool, I'm not shooting down Canva, I love it, but sometimes you need to go and do the thing that everyone and the rest of the agency is doing, because they want it as well. Good question, John Carney.
So John is a newbie at BYOL, and so I think he has question about his homework. Can you explain how to run a prototype and then attach it to the projects part of our homework? So I'm assuming that's actually functionality on your site.
So as part of the course, I get to do a bit of a cross-sell, is you do the videos, there are questions, and there are projects to submit. And they're not everywhere, but I feel like making people do it, you don't have to do it, but I feel like putting it into practice draws out so much more long-term learning. And then what John needs to do there is do a little screen capture of him using the prototype, and then upload it to YouTube or Vimeo, whatever the free site is, and post that link. So you don't post the video, you stick it on a YouTube account or a Vimeo account, create one of those for free, and then post it. And we do certificates to bring your laptop. So when you get to the end of your course, you request a certificate, and they go through, the teaching assistants will check those projects. The rest of the community will chip in on your projects as well. We've got a great community that kind of help each other and comment, and it's all very positive. Love it. But yeah, there you go.
Cool. So we're kind of reaching the end here, Daniel. It's been really amazing having you on. Thank you so much for taking the time. And anybody who's still here, byol.me/Philip, my affiliate link to support my work here on YouTube and to support Dan. If you use code FIG10, you're going to get 10% off for a month, for a year, if you're a first-time person. And as I said, you don't just get access to the Figma course, you get access to his entire library of training, which is incredibly extensive.
About 30 courses now, and there's everything.
How many?
30. About 30.
There you go. And from the testimonials that you could read here in the comments as they went by, people love it. And and Dan is absolutely, and I started off my career teaching. Dan is a natural teacher and really fun, really engaging, and he makes learning this click and button stuff really, really easy and natural. So kudos to you, Dan. You're doing our industry.
And thanks for all the the lovely comments. Making me blush, Philip.
Oh, let's see. All right, you guys, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel, for being with us. And thanks to everybody in the audience for your great questions. And go out there and learn some Figma, man. Go to that V-shaped skill set. All right, take care.
Bye, everyone.